Welcome to Destiny Massive Breakdowns, episode 301. I'm Legoleflash, and this week is going to look a little bit different than before. I do have Kabr joining me this week, who is one of the hosts of Podcast vs. Enemies, our PvE show in the Destiny Massive Breakdowns network, and I thought it'd be a great opportunity to go over some of the perks that translate well between PvE and PvP. I guarantee you're going to want to listen to all that. The pre-show stuff was amazing. It's going to be good, y'all. Okay, but before we get to all that, we have some big changes for the show we need to talk about. The Destiny Massive Breakdowns podcast is coming to a close, and Podcast vs. Enemies will be the flagship podcast for DMB. We're working on releasing a special final episode, but this is the penultimate episode of the Destiny Massive Breakdowns podcast. The final episode may not release in a regularly scheduled fashion, so be sure to have your notifications on, whether it's a podcast app, Discord, or the Destiny Massive Breakdowns Twitter. I know this may catch many by surprise, and the decision did not come easy. When the previous hosts were both hired by Bungie, Illphysics and I were brought on to keep the show going. I personally had a lot of IRL commitments at the time, but I love Destiny Massive Breakdowns, and I still love Destiny Massive Breakdowns. And I committed to 6 months of hosting the show at that time. I personally had hopes that either I'd be in a better position to keep hosting after that time, or that Kit would return to take over the show. Unfortunately, as great as content creation has been going for me, I'm still balancing several other jobs and family life as well, and Kit is unable to return too. I know some may look at this and think it's just a few hours a week, what's the big deal? And I'll be transparent about what this show has been like for me. It's tons of hours of research before every episode, and that's just that alone. That's before we plan and record every episode that day. So it just isn't possible for me to continue to do that any longer in the context of the rest of my life. Those who know me and Tony know we go 0 or 100. It's been kind of our thing, and that leads me to the next thing that I need to talk about. And that's that Tony has stepped down as well and will not be joining for the last 2 episodes here. There's nothing between me and Tony. We're still great. I love Tony, and I hope y'all can find future content of both of us working together elsewhere. A lot of people are going to ask why, and I knew this going into this episode and just going into the future. I know there will be some that don't listen to this episode, but for those that do, I don't want to try to speak for Tony, but I do want to speak about what I witnessed in our time together here. I feel like it's my responsibility as a friend, his co-host, and just being a decent human being. I have his permission to speak from all this from my heart, and so I'm going to do that. I witnessed Tony get put into a box on this show. No matter how Tony presented or prepared information, he was not able to speak without experiencing people telling him how he should be or what he should sound like. Every single avenue that someone could reach out to us was used to tell Tony how to change, and I witnessed it every time we got together, every single time. And anything that you've seen was just like the tip of an iceberg of stuff that I saw in private. Just personally, my previous job was in a band with a black lead who was and is one of my best friends. We traveled and operated like a close family for 8 years, and I witnessed more racism in coded language in 6 months of doing this show with Tony than I did in 8 years of being in that band. And none of that's right. No amount of time, no amount of that is right. And I'm not saying all this to shame all the Destiny Massive Breakdowns listeners out there. I know there are so many of you that supported me and Physics online on Twitter and in the Discord, and I'm so thankful for all your words on the new version of the show we were able to bring to the table. But I do want to share this because I refuse to let racism just float by without acknowledgement, and I'm going to call it out for what it is. There were weeks of pre-show I was sick to my stomach from hearing the words left for Tony. So yeah, I support Tony stepping away no matter when he chose to do it, whether it was at the end or right now, and I won't be quiet about what I saw him go through. I also want to make it extremely clear, and this is really important to me, that this was my choice, Lego's, to start stepping down due to my own family and IRL commitments, which I was clear about with Destiny Master Breakdowns when we first took over the show. I don't want to hear about anyone blaming Tony for Destiny Master Breakdowns podcast ending. This was technically all in the works the moment the old hosts were hired by Bungie and unable to do the podcast anymore. I just personally could not commit more than this length of time, despite how much I wanted to and how much I love the show and everyone who has supported us along the way. Plus, through all this, Destiny Master Breakdowns lives on. Beneath Twin Suns, a Star Wars podcast hosted by the original hosts, Kit Kutcha and Mercules, will continue on, and Podcasts versus Enemies, the PvE show, will be the new flagship podcast for Destiny Master Breakdowns, and I'm excited to talk about that and maybe even bring a little bit of a preview of that knowledge here this week, since we have one of the hosts, Saint Kabr, with us this week. And if by some chance listeners don't know who you are, Saint Kabr, please tell us a little bit about yourself and also what y'all do over at Podcast versus Enemies.
Yeah, absolutely. I am happy to be here. It is, it's kind of end of an era for Massive Breakdowns, but it is not the end of Massive Breakdowns by any means. My name is Saint Kabr, and if you are into the lore of the game, you might know that itself is going to tell you some things. I am a Titan main, and that reference for that name goes all the way back to the very first raid the game ever had in Vault of Glass. I have been playing the game since the very beginning, and I really started to get more involved around the time Forsaken came out. I found myself a solid clan. I really started to invest there, called Clan Truth, which I'm still a member of today. After I really started getting invested into raiding, working as a community Sherpa, going in for my first day one clears. First day one clear attempt was Crown of Sorrow. We did not get that. Ooh. It did not happen. That was an absolutely brutal one for those of you who are around during the time. Yeah. Unfortunately, did not get that clear, but we stuck together. I've had pretty much the exact same raid team for my clan for the past 4 years or so. I'm proud to say that since then, we've gone on to do many day one clears, and almost every raid in the game is a duo or a trio. So big shout out to the team there. And honestly, if I have learned anything over the years, it is that having a good team, having good people to play with, can make or break the experience, and it's what keeps me coming back week after week. I'm just 1/3 of PvE, though, Podcast versus Enemies, with Court and Impetus, who are my resident Hunter and Warlock counterparts, and they are PvE gurus in their own right. We cover everything from our favorite GM builds, current raid meta, and weapon reviews and breakdowns, similar to what you may be familiar with here on Massive Breakdowns, but from a little bit of a different perspective, from the PvE perspective.
Yeah, dude, I'm so pumped to have you here, and being a listener of yours, and also having played some raids with you, and just seeing like all this transition to PvE. It's perfect to have you on. I feel like I would have had everyone from the show on, Court and Impetus, all at the same time if the schedules would have aligned just perfectly. I know we kind of threw this together last second, but that would have been quite the show. Maybe I'll arrange that sometime. Maybe I'll butt my way into the PvE show at some point.
Yeah, between our whole staff, I mean, we've pretty much got a raid team, and we've come close to getting almost everybody in the same run, which is always a lot of fun. I mean, speaking of the game, let's talk about the game. So I'll talk about. We'll just jump in with last week in Destiny here. So I'll say I've been Loaded Question is back on the menu. I've been grinding with some Saber GMs. We're getting the times down. Some 11-minute runs. Some we're pushing to break that 10-minute mark. It feels good. Been playing a little bit of Iron Banner, searching for a good pressurized precision. Which I mean, Lego, you fusion rifles. You may happen to be familiar, right?
Yeah, I did all my grinding first week, so I'm out. No more banner for me. I got the rangefinder Discord role, and I'm just done. I'm out. I'm good. Even for a PvP guy, it's not that I wouldn't go into it. I got 3 resets in within the first week, and I was like, okay, let me do some PvE stuff for a bit.
And we're good. That's also landed me quite a few Randy's throwing knife drops, which, Randy's, in the Crucible, sure. In PvE, rapid fire scouts, they they're in a pretty strong position as far as primary weapons go. Scouts are in a pretty good position, and then rapid fire scouts being the best archetype out of that weapon, little subfamily there. So I'm definitely enjoying that. There's a lot of potential roles there. Definitely would like to land another rampage role on that. I've got a pretty good kinetic tremors role on that with rapid hit, which I've been having some good fun with. How about you, Lego? You're done with Iron Banner. What have you been up to?
Wait, rampage. We got to talk about Randy's for a second.
Yeah.
So I have been on the hunt for Randy's. It's one of the only weapons that I'm interested in that has Cascade Point that also rolls Discord in the third column. So for you to spit out Rampage randomly, I'm like, wait, when we're going to talk about perks in a second and the ones to go for between PvE and PvP, and I'm so curious that out of all these perks, it's y'all. If y'all listen to this show, we've talked about the ritual weapons here, the ones that draw from Vanguard, Crucible, and Gambit, and how many perks they have in those columns. So Rampage is the one you're interested in. I need you to explain that a bit for a second on this archetype.
Sure. And I hear you. Okay, Cascade Point. You want the SMG scout rifle. Sure. No, I get it. There's a place for that. And I think that Swash is appealing too. But I just when I think about, and this is kind of getting into the episode a little bit here. When I think about a weapon, I like to think about what is my weapon archetype, kind of what is its role, and then what are the traits that are going to lean into that role, right? I got a rapid fire scout rifle here. It's pretty good output against red bars. It's decent output against your kind of majors and stuff like that. But if I'm using this weapon to clear out some waves, I'm using it to clear out some enemies, Rampage, it may not be the golden child of that it once was of yesteryear, but I can't deny that stacking up to 33% damage is still pretty appealing. And we got Swatch there too, but I think I'm less appealed towards Swashbuckler on a weapon that has so much range, right? I don't know. I don't know. That's my thought.
No, that makes sense. And it makes sense too, Rampage being the stacking version of it, because oftentimes in PvP, my PvP mindset, this is the whole reason this is going to be such an interesting conversation, is because my mindset is always like, well, it's just one kill. Rampage times one is Golden Tricorn so much better. Why do you even care? And you're like, oh, well, it's a rapid fire. You're mowing down enemies rapidly. Rampage, once you get to that ×3 and you get that 33.1% damage increase going for 4.5 seconds, that's pretty good. So I see the appeal, and it's so interesting, the difference between landscapes of what you want to go for. So this is good.
Plus we got it's champion counter often. Right, scouts are so frequently. It's overload right now, but so frequently scouts are in that champ meta conversation, right?
That's true. That is so true. Good to keep in mind. Okay, so rest of my week, I actually was on vacation this week, believe it or not. So I missed a ton of Destiny stuff. People are going crazy online about the seasonal model and bans and all sorts of other stuff. But I have been out of it, and it's been very peaceful. I loved my time on the beach, but before I left, I was doing the GM grind too for Loaded Question. I am so happy to get the Adept Overflow Control Burst that I recommended. I cannot believe that I finally got it, because at first I got just a auto-loading Control Burst. I was like, that'll do. But the thing that kept me going was the other roll I got was an all-range under pressure roll for PvP, but it only had Harmony in the last column. So I was like, it's nearly perfect, but it's not. It could be better.
It could be better.
As is the Destiny way. So because I didn't have it perfect on either, I was like, I'll keep going. And then I got the perfect PvE Overflow Control Burst, and I was like, okay, I can call it quit now. But the most interesting thing for me was how much I enjoyed my Volt Shot Unexpected Resurgence in that Grandmaster. and my teammates were commenting on it because I put out a whole video about it. I talked about it last episode about how I really got dunked on for no one liking glaives and everyone saying this thing wasn't any good. I took it into PvE, and I think I like it even better there because Impulse Amplifier, you can deck it out where you got pretty much 100 reload and the Impulse Amplifier giving it that reload duration multiplier. It feels snappy. One shot, boom, boom, volt shot, one shot. And just as they're coming down from the ships, it's just immediately, and you're stunning the overloaded mods, and it just...
And the amount of damage reduction you're getting from that shield.
Yes, that too.
Undeniable.
And that saved me. Okay, so I gotta tell this real quick, that I did a lot of GMs using the Fire Team app finder on BNet because it's just so easy to just jump in, and it's a relatively easy week. But I joined one team where it was like, be patient with us. That was the title of it or something like that. I was like, sure.
We all been there.
I'm a PvP guy, but I'll come help out. Just see what happens. And within the first, they all just stayed on the point as the ships came down and just got slaughtered. And so from the beginning, I was like rezzing, glaive shield, volt shot. Like, I just felt like such a legend. You know, those are the moments in Destiny where you're like, this is what makes this game great. This is like why I love this weapon. I'm loving what I'm doing. I'm helping people, and I'm sure to them they were like, "Whoa, that glaive's pretty good. What is that?" And they're like inspecting me. I'm just picturing it. That didn't actually happen. I don't know what they were thinking, but I had a good time doing that GM. So yeah, that was pretty much my week. Other than the triple cascade point build, finally got it.
Okay.
All I was telling
triple.
Yes, because machine gun, and then there's the rare primaries in the energy slot, the Konarok, and also positive outlook. I had Konarok last time, Gunsmith was selling it, but I finally got positive outlook with it, which absolutely slays. I don't know, it's one of those weapons like Zealot's Reward where like on paper it doesn't make sense why you would like it, but it's actually like super solid. I'm really enjoying positive outlook if with the right roll. Should clarify. Sure. So yeah, pretty good. What do you think about positive outlook? I'm curious as the Vanguard weapon, having a PvE guy on the show.
Yeah, it's it's fine. You know, I think that I was so tainted because for a long time, precision auto rifles were just not in a good place in PvE, and we've seen a bunch of buffs to our primaries in PvE. You know, positive outlook did come in here with it's got golden tricorn right in its last column. It's fine. You know, it's fine. There's some other auto rifles. I mean, like I'm all hooked on Rufus. You know,
who isn't?
Like it's right. Yeah, it's like undeniable. You know, and when it comes to Void auto rifles, I still will reach way back into Garden of Salvation. And this is going back quite a ways, and oh my! What is the name of this auto rifle here? This is going to drive me nuts.
I can picture it, but I'm not as familiar with that raid. I will throw out though, Void, Age Old Bond from Last Wish is just slaying right now too. So I have no legs to stand on for positive outlook other than Cascade Point is great. Outside of that though, Age Old Bond was slaying it for me because you can get. You can get that famous repulsor brace / destabilizing rounds in both columns, I believe. Either that or
it was a first time on a primary.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
No, you could get it on. Oh, maybe you're right. Maybe on a primary. You could get it on other stuff, but you might be right on a primary.
They put it on like a shotgun. They put it on a couple. But I think this is a first time. And no deny it. And those. For those who know me, know I am an offensive bulwark Titan junkie. I can't get enough of it, so that perk combo really speaks to me there. Reckless Oracle is the Garden of Salvation one that I was thinking of. I use that Outlaw Swashbuckler, and it just feels good. It just feels right, yeah.
You know what's funny about you saying that was the only auto with destabilizing and repulsor braces? Positive Outlook is the other one that is the only other primary.
I suppose they're both... Is that new? Yeah, that's new too.
Yeah,
so, okay,
they're both
that's
reprised. That's pretty funny. Okay, well, we're gonna talk about the rest of these perks. We are, but I do still want to say a special thanks because all of y'all have supported the show for so long, and I've had people DM me even just talking about coming on just as me and Tony had taken over for that period of time, came on just to support, and those legacy members who have supported. And I want to just thank all you patrons for that support. Doesn't go unnoticed. I know the show has been ending, and I know we're transferring to PvE being the lead show here, but I do want to still just thank you all for supporting us through this time and in the future, those who keep supporting Destiny Master Breakdowns. I love Destiny Master Breakdowns, and so I still appreciate the support, and we'll still read this out loud very proudly. I also want to say thanks to the ongoing sponsor guardians who give on a massive level every month. We still have the list here. I am K Rose, a Modern Viking, Bryce Aroni, Moonlight, Deacon, This Moment, Shazzle, and Asking Monk. Thank you so much for your massive donation. And on to the main talk. I am so pumped to talk about these perks. The best perks between PvE and PvP. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons that we talked about this topic, I want to hit right off the bat, is deciding which one to keep in your vault is just the funniest, because you're often running out of space. Everyone does their annual vault cleaning when a new expansion comes around, and you're faced with the decision of which one of these two of the exact same guns you want to keep, and you're torn between like, okay, I got this one that's good for PvE and this one that's good for PvP, and then you've got something in the middle, and oftentimes you end up keeping that one in the middle because it's the unique role, or it just got these banger perks that works great for both.
It's the sweet spot. It's the Goldilocks role, you know?
Yes. And so that leads us into, well, what makes that perk great? And for me, I'm curious, I want to hear from you first, Saint. What to you makes a perk great?
So when I think about, top traits, just absolutely best. What are traits that, kind of my base criteria is, what is the benefit? Yeah. What is the activation, and how often can I have that benefit up? Right. So like, what is it? How much of a benefit am I getting? How hard is it to get that benefit? And then also, how much of a influence does that have on the specific weapon that this trait is kind of catered towards? Because as we'll get into right off the bat here, there are traits that are just made for certain archetypes, and there are traits that make an archetype or break an archetype, right? If you want to go that direction. So how much of a benefit am I getting? How hard is it to get that benefit? And then how much of a game changer is that going to be on the archetype of weapon that I'm using? Lego, what makes a great trait for you? Same.
I feel like for me, there's on one hand, there's like the flat stat boost. Like if it's just a huge, like Killing Wind is honestly one, I didn't have it on my list, but it's one of the ones that always comes to mind when I'm just like, stat boost, that's just like so much stuff. And then there's other ones that we'll talk about, some barrel ones and some magazine ones in a little bit, that just give you just a crazy boost to your stats. And those ones I immediately like, oh man, that's really good. But then also there's and that goes for damage too, damage resistance or damage buff, but the flip side of that is ease of use. And I come across this a lot on my YouTube journey of like, how do I explain this perk to somebody, and is it easy enough that they'll use it? Because if I list out too many possibilities of ways to do it or too many steps, then somebody immediately takes it off the table. For some people out there, even Cascade Point that we talked about earlier, just the fact that it is a weapon swap perk, they're out. They're like, I'm not interested, just because it has that one step. So to me, what makes a perk great, that, there are things that can overcome that, which I will, keep talking about my love for Cascade Point. But I think simplicity is a part of that, like ease of use, how easy is it to use and how free is it? Like, you know, you start a Crucible match and you just got it. You start PvE. You don't need to kill somebody. Like, there's some perks that just require precision hits versus kills, and that is a factor, I think, in what makes a perk great. If you don't have to get the kill, you can just lay those crits into a boss and not reload or whatever it is, damage buff. Those are things that I feel like make it great.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that people are adverse to weapon swapping perks, because when Harmony first came out, I can't, the name of this exact modifier escapes me, but when they first released like Prestige Spire Stars and some other stuff like this, it's like kind of around the time that I had like really started to get into raiding. You know, I was like, yeah, I'd done all the other raids, but now I was like kind of really getting into it. And there was a modifier that required you to basically swap weapons every time you expended a magazine.
Ooh.
So you would only get as much ammo as you know, you get one mag, you swap to the next weapon, you use one mag, you swap to the next weapon. And I got so sick of playing Prestige Spire with this constant swapping loadout that when Harmony first came out, I was completely uninterested. And it took like a year before I kind of came around to the fact that, okay, Harmony's a pretty good trait, yeah. Sometimes you get burned by those modifiers. I'm sure I'll get some comments telling me that, you know, what that was. But yeah, man, Aspire Stars, that was also that's a long time ago.
That was a long time ago.
Or yeah, I don't know. It's a long time. Years, okay? Years. That's the important part.
It's so funny you bring that up, because I slightly remember that, but I went through a wave with raids where I like was into it with the first Callus raid. I was like, okay, did it a few times, and then when raids started coming after that, I went way downhill and sunk way into PvP, which I was already, but I like went way into the shadows of PvP and didn't come out for a while. But that perk rings a bell, or that modifier rings a bell. So that's really interesting, the way that could have a play, and it has me racking my brain right now for like, is there any like something to do with my subclass, because I was a Titan in the beginning, and there's a lot of one-hit ability stuff with Titan, and not to say Hunter doesn't have that, like you got throwing knives, but there are just so many easy ways to one-shot in PvP with your ability with a Titan versus my Void Hunter now, which has barely any, like it's all passive ability use that affects yourself. It doesn't affect the enemy. So a lot of the perks that require an ability are like way off the table for me, and I'm like, oh man, like I'll never do this or that, because like Grenadier is one of the ones Adrenaline Junkie, and even Swashbuckler to a degree on my Void Hunter. It's like, I'm not, how often am I killing someone with my smoke? Come on, you know. It happens, but okay,
it's tough. It's not, you're not, you know, RM Kara Spine just guaranteed Adrenaline Junkies, you know, not quite the same flow there.
That is another story. I'm Cars. I feel like we've talked about that plenty on this show past few episodes.
Yeah. We jump in here?
Yeah, let's jump in. I'll just let you kind of take off with the perks, and I'll jump in, because I definitely have some question about your list, as I'm sure you will have about mine.
Yeah, we'll kind of go back and forth here with our favorite traits. You know, also, you know, and again, the idea here is like best traits in the game, PvE and PvP, right? So they've got to have some kind of value proposition across both sandboxes. And the one that I'm going to start off with is, I think, sometimes a sleeper, but truly has a lot of value when it's capitalized on, and that is Disruption Break. On Elemental Barrier or Guardian Shield Break, weakens the enemy to kinetic damage by 50% for 5.5 seconds. Okay. This does not sound crazy at first. You know, in PvE, I think the easy value proposition here is you put down the barrier shield, you break on element, right, with whatever weapon it may be. There's several grenade launchers that have this perk. Arbalest is obviously very famous for the way that this trait works and compounds on itself. Otherwise, it's pretty much energy weapons. But this is like part of the original meta fueling something like Is an Ivy's Bird burden, obscene damage output. You burst down a barrier champion, you pull out the kinetic weapon, and then you're able to just absolutely shred them with a weapon like burden. But where I see this weapon kind of working its way into the Crucible is maybe in more of a sixes environment, but there are some ways, this is kind of like forbidden, frowned upon meta, but weapons like Truth Teller, Explosive Personality, Empty Vessel, these weapons are already, they are made to blint. They're born to blint, and when you put a perk like this in there that is giving you an extra 50% kinetic damage to that cleanup hit, man, that is insanely strong for just asking you to use the weapon in its kind of in a way that is very natural to its archetype, I would say. And that kind of goes again to my mindset of why I put this one on the list in the first place, because it's like it just happens naturally. You were talking about this in the in the explaining the perk sense of how hard is it to grasp at the perk or way to capitalize on this perk. People that are if you're using Truth Teller in the Crucible, you're probably blunting. There's about a 90% chance, right? And this is a trait that just allows you to play that play style even to a higher degree, or even to a more effective degree, as you swap to that weapon to clean up the kill, whether that is extra body shot damage you're getting on your hand cannon, that is a little bit extra damage you're getting on that scout rifle, SMG, whatever it may be, to clean up that kill. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you ever Disruption Break in the Crucible? What's the vibe? Am I crazy for thinking that there's a play here? Or?
You're not crazy. I think it's a undeniably amazing perk. I think that for me and the way I play, like, I never end up utilizing it because I'm a very risky PvP player. I got that one shot, and if I screw it up, I'm dead. That's just the way that I play. And so if I get, the way it goes down, like, like it for me is like, I got the one shot, and if I didn't get them and the Disruption Break procs, like maybe I get them halfway, and then I swap to my primary, by that time, I feel like most of the players I play, I'm dead at that point. Anyway, by the time I pull off, unless I'm very specifically going for a weapon swap play style, which is why I put in the notes. I was like, if it was on a bow, oh man, I'd be in. Like, that would be broken, But there is some stuff, and they keep coming out with more interesting stuff. Like now, and the game has changed so much. Like Zealot's Reward is a rapid fire fusion that has Disruption Break in the last column, and you can get under pressure Disruption Break, and whenever Garden comes back and they make it craftable, if they keep those perks, which I assume that they will, the way that they've kept Last Wish's perks the same, I think that Zealots is gonna give Iterative Loop a bit of a run in PvP, because that's such a solid gun that has some juice that no one's figured out exactly what's going on with it yet. But to have Disruption Break at the end, when rapid fires don't require high impact reserves anymore to get their optimal bolts to kill, you can use Disruption Break there, and it makes those cleanup kills where those mistakes are more lenient. So definitely, even the new glaive, the glaive for the dungeon has
Greasy Luck.
Break. Yeah, Greasy Luck.
Yeah, man, and that is a hit in PvE.
Is it? I did not know.
Because think about this: the glaive melee itself usually counts as kinetic damage. There's a play there, dude. There is a play there for sure.
Wow. So which is weird. Yeah, that is weird. So you could have close to melee running and get Disruption Break. Wow.
Yeah. You're just just small plug. We were just talking about this on a couple episodes on PvE. The way that you can keep close to melee up, you get a kill, you break the shield on one of those wizard majors, you go to town on that thing. It's kind of a war crime. It's kind of brutal. Okay.
You have my mind rolling right now, because so I saw a clip of somebody who figured out with this glaive how to do a very fast shoot to melee in the Crucible. Like, maybe there's not as much of a delay between firing and meleeing on this glaive. I haven't tested it enough to say for sure yet, and we haven't deep dived it on this show, but I would assume that was what was going on in the clip, because otherwise the melee shot damage would not do enough to like do enough to hurt them, but it is enough damage. It's just over 100 DPS against another Guardian, and so Disruption Break popping could let them melee. I could see it. I could see it.
50% extra damage. That's a big multiplier.
It's a big multiplier. But now I'm running back and forth because shield is a little bit more, and I'm like, I don't know. I need to look at the exact numbers, but regardless, that's fascinating. Disruption break's really strong. That glaive is super fast. I was already interested in it. Now I need to run the dungeon even more. I grinded. I went for it for a little while, just doing the same encounter over and over again, and I never got the glaive once. I'm pretty disappointed in that. But I'll have another go at it soon. Okay. Should I hit something on my list? Should we go back and forth?
Yeah. We'll just ping and pong. All right.
Let's do it. Okay. I want to hit the big one for me because this one is just like I don't know. I'm curious to hear your take on it from a PvE perspective. But for me, high impact reserves is just such a free, not always on, but easily activated. I know it works like under pressure. It's activated progressively through the magazine from 50% to 0% of your magazine, and it buffs. In PvE, that's 12.1% to 15.6%, and in PvP, it's 3% to 6%, and that's free. Like, you don't do anything. You could just pull out your weapon, and it's at half mag, and you do that much extra damage. Same thing in PvP. The thing in PvP and what makes it so good is it's always active on special weapons in the Crucible because you start with it. That's not the case with PvE, so it's not always active. It's hard to say it's free in that sense, but it applies to a more broad broad enemy encounter scenarios because it's not like Vorpal where it has to be a certain type of enemy. It just will activate against anyone. I'm curious where that lands for you in PvE, because in PvP that 3 to 6% changes everything for time to kill values, to how many bolts on a fusion rifle you need to kill, to just that extra boost of damage you need. And I know it was a highlight for a while on linear fusion rifles. I'm not sure how that damage lands now with all the new options, so I'm curious on your take.
So you've got, there is some competition. High Impact Reserves has definitely had a place. I remember way back in the day doing duo Eater of Worlds, High Impact Reserves, and on the I Kill a Sniper Rifle was like the go-to weapon, and there was crazy. No doubt about it. Yeah, and it is still a weapon that you can capitalize on in other ways. We're looking at a weapon like Prideous Revenge, a rapid fire sniper rifle. Snipers continue to be buffed in the PvE sandbox as they get pushed up just a little bit higher and a little bit higher each season. Maybe we could still use another one or two of those buffs, but there are some traits like that, 4 times a charm, the rewind rounds that are allowing you to stay in that sweet spot and really get a lot out of this damage buff. I think this has been in some instances overshadowed by traits. Firing line 25% on critical hit is just absolutely insane when you are in a situation in which you can capitalize on that, right? You got a couple teammates around, you're in a dungeon or higher. As long as it's not just you and one other in a duo type of situation, firing line is incredibly strong. But yeah, when you have perks, 4 times a charm, triple tap that allow you to stay in that lower magazine a little bit longer, kind of keep that buff going, undoubtedly there is a place for high impact reserves in the PvE meta for sure.
Nice. Yeah, I get where you're coming from, though, with all the new perks. And the one that keeps coming to mind for me is bait and switch for PvE, because it's just on pretty much anything that high impact reserves is on, bait and switch could potentially roll on. And it's like, why not just go for that if you're swapping weapons all the time, which just makes me laugh because I'm like, people will swap weapons for that, but they won't swap weapons for Cascade Point. What's the problem here? But I get
people see 35% and they're like, hey yo, what's going on over here?
Honestly. All right, hit me with another one of yours.
All right, I'm gonna go for, maybe not as flashy of a perk, but a great perk, and that is Archer's Tempo. Archer's Tempo is 0.75 draw time multiplier on precision hit. And there's a couple things going on here. The first thing I'm going to say off the bat is, something that's it's kind of going to be a trend here in the episode is any trait that offers a scalar or a multiplier is just incredibly powerful because it allows you to get at more than just the 0 to 100 stat band on any given stat is one thing, but then you add in a multiplier to the situation and you are almost circumventing the cap, the effective kind of cap of that stat, and man, is that so strong in any situation. Second thing I'll say about Archer's Tempo is that it doesn't even require a kill.
Yeah.
Right.
Very big.
And, when we think about, Lego, I know you're a bow man too. When you think about bows, like what is the bow's weakness?
Yeah, it's reload and draw time.
Yeah, right. And Archer's Tempo is just been that you can't live without it trait for bows, like since it came out. And I think that's why it kind of deserves the conversation, even though, Archer's Tempo is a bow's trait and it's not something that's really relevant to like every kind of weapon archetype. Like a lot of these perks we're going to talk about can go on almost any kind of archetype and weapon and stuff like that. Archer's Tempo is just a bow perk, but it is such a can't live without it, gotta have it trait that I think it deserves at least a mention in the kind of top trait combo of just must have when you're looking at a bow. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about it.
No, I feel you. It's funny that this is one of the ones that, like, I'll go for it on a bow, but a lot of times it isn't the make or break for me because the feel of the bow is so important in PvP over I just want to hit my shots most of the time. And this one rewards you for that. So it goes hand in hand with that ideology. And so I definitely agree with you. It's not one that I'm as excited about just because it's not doing anything to change the way I play. It's just making it faster. I honestly should be more excited about it. I don't know why I'm not. I need to get in there with some Archer's Tempo stuff and start using it versus things that don't, because I am absolutely with you on the 0.75 draw time multiplier. Anything with a multiplier that's helping you push past the stats, and I'm going to talk about it on some of the reload perks as well, is just a huge bonus to any weapon. Gotta have it. So I'm with you. That one's a standout. Even though it's isolated to one archetype of weapons, still a standout perk. I think that leads me to talk about one that's a standout archetype perk as well, which is Impulse Amplifier. Impulse Amplifier is found on some other weapons, but it has some benefits that really affect those archetypes. So the one that everybody thinks about is the 35% increased projectile velocity. That's like a given and is the one that I think of mostly on glaives because it's so essential for a glaive to feel right at all. But then you've also got 20 reload speed and a 0.8 times reload duration multiplier on rockets and 0.85 times on grenade launchers and glaives. So everything you were just saying, and then more for grenade launchers, rockets, and for glaives. And I just feel like it's so hard to pass up. I was looking at it on the new Unexpected Resurgence and going back and forth with people, Impulse Amplifier versus Feeding Frenzy. And I was like, y'all, Impulse Amplifier is giving you a 0.8 times reload duration multiplier, and Feeding Frenzy was like a 0.9. Like, it was not even close to the level that Impulse Amplifier was. And Impulse Amplifier is just giving it to you for free. There's no prerequisites for it. So it's definitely going to be on my mind more now that I deep dived it on glaives, because I wasn't really, it was like that's nice to have on rockets. And now I'm like, is this an essential on rockets? And it led me to ask you, what did you think about it on the new Cold Comfort rocket? Because there's great assassin, Envious Assassin on there, like all the extra reload stuff. You've got ensemble, but also 35% increased projectile velocity, 20 reload speed, 0.8 times reload duration multiplier. That's a lot of perks in one versus the doing work to get extra in the mag, and then as the fight goes on you don't have that. Or ensembles, I think ensemble's a 0.9, I believe. It's not quite as much. Need to double check that.
Yeah, ensemble's like 40 reload.
Yeah, it doesn't even have a multiplier on it.
Which is, ensemble's fine on some weapons where you really can't get anything better. You're playing in a team, sure, 30 handling, 40 reload, that's fine. I think Impulse Amplifier, the way that you describe the value of the projectile velocity and the scalar, right? We were just talking about scalar. Scalar is incredible. You could push yourself up to 90 reload-ish. You get a scalar of 0.8 on there. You're really putting out some damage depending on the other trait that you're listening to. But, it's interesting that you bring up Cold Comfort, because this is another one you were just digging into. And I think that one of the Envious Assassin is seen as a perk that's potentially very valuable, but also kind of just difficult to set up.
Yeah.
And I will say that I think one of my favorite things about Envious Assassin is that in the PvE sense, that you can set it up and then save it. So you can set yourself up with a bunch of forbearance kills, and then you swap to your rocket, and it triggers that 3 shots in the mag, and you can put your rocket away, and you can save that for a DPS phase. Now, I get that is, you're kind of asking a lot of the setup, right? You got to remember to swap to it, you got to remember to put it back, you got to remember to bring it back out and not use it until DPS phase. It's a lot. Versus Impulse Amplifier offers that just kind of automatic benefit, right? The no thought about it benefit. And this is a perk. I'm a PvE guy, but come on, we all every Destiny player plays both sides of the coin here. Yeah. Impulse Amplifier is a trait that I have become absolutely hooked on when it comes to using a grenade launcher in the Crucible.
Yeah.
I cannot, I got a Typhon, and I got another Future Word Cult that names escapes me right now, GL. They both have Impulse Amplifier, dude, and I can't live without it in PvP. It's so effective on a grenade launcher in PvP. It's insane. Yeah. Not even mentioning glaives, right? Yeah. I mean, just rockets and GLs alone, such a good trait. Such a good trait.
I'm so glad to hear you on board with it and really sucked into it on a certain weapon archetype, because that's how I am. I've always been that way with it on glaives, and now the doors for the other archetypes are opening up for me. And I'm like, ooh, man, there's just so many. I talked before, what makes a perk good, and this has both those things. Has all the stats, so many different stat boosts, and it's easy to use. It just is there.
So I'm going to pivot here a little bit into a trait that maybe has a similar floor, but even a higher ceiling, right? And a trait that you can really grow to absolutely master, yet is still active 100% of the time, and that is Eager Edge. I feel like, I can't make a top traits list without thinking about Eager Edge. It is the speedrunner's dream. It's the shatter skater, well skaters, it's where they live. And also over the, past couple years or so, I've come to find that it is the very aggressive, very mobile kind of Crucible players heavy of choice. And obviously from my point of view, this is just, I want to get, I'm a Ray guy, I'm a PvE guy, I want to get around the map quick, right? And I'm a Titan, and Thunder Crash skating is you get a one and done because it uses your super every time that you do it. It's still fun, but it's not quite the same. So I'm not quite a well skater constantly type of guy, but undeniable that it is just an absolute fixture in PvE. I'm interested here. Do you ever dabble in a little Eager Edge PvP side? What's kind of the vibe there? Do you run into this? Do you feel like in the Crucible?
Yes, most definitely run into it. Semi do it myself. I wish that I was just had it in my pocket to pull out whenever I want to do a trick shot, because I've seen people that do that in the Crucible and it's incredible. But just as take an example of Rumble, just go to town and have ammo for way longer than you should, and there's just no chance that anybody who spawns in with their primary weapons, are gonna do, if you're running your corners right, you're in third person, it's not gonna happen. So yes, Eager Edge, totally with you on it being amazing for PvE and PvP, and I wish that I had spent more time with it. I got my craftable, one for the 30th anniversary, and both of them actually. But this is the only ones I have crafted from the 30th anniversary somehow is the swords. But I know I know.
Oh, no Battler, no Pardon or Dust?
I actually am not a fan of the Battler, and I just despise grenade launchers so much that I can't bring myself to do it. I'm actually, get this, grenade launchers, I'm one away from the ultimate, one from Vow. I just haven't gotten that last pattern yet, and I could easily just go and purchase it, but like do one quick Vow boss run, and I can't bring myself to do it. So I got a list.
Forbearance.
Yes.
Yeah, you want to talk about a meta dominating weapon? That's it right there. It's got everything. They were like a chain reaction, and it heals you. Okay, yeah, it won't just ship it, send it. Yeah, that's good. No, that's good. That's all right.
Oh yeah, it's good. Okay. I want to follow up with yours that takes a little bit more effort and go into the category of takes a lot more effort, and that is Golden Tricorn. In a sense, I feel like I built my YouTube channel off of this perk almost. But yeah, Golden Tricorn, it is super easy to activate. I call it the better Rampage, as I had for a while, because it's 7 seconds of a 15% buff versus Golden in PvP. Rampage, starts much less at 10% for only 4.5 seconds. So you get, so much more time, so much more damage. It breaks a lot of archetypes at just that one kill. No reload necessary. You just keep going off. And I found I really enjoy it in PvE when I start stacking the second level of the perk, which just requires an ability kill within those 7 seconds to bump it up to 50% damage buff on the weapon. And if you got a weapon that has that in a build that relies on abilities, there's just nothing like keeping that 50% buff roll in. You got, like, say it's solar and you're running Path of Burning Steps and you get those solar kills going. You got both buffs at the same time. Oh man, nothing.
They don't stand a chance.
Yeah.
They don't stand a chance.
Not a chance. And, you never want to try to aim for something like that on a boss encounter because, your buddies are killing all the ads next to you. You're never going to get it rolling unless you were just tip-top coordinated team. But it is a blast to use Golden Tricorn, and to stack that 50% buff, if you get it going in PvP, which, let's be real, is not that hard to do with all the one-shot, like Peregrine Greaves. Just throw on Peregrine Greaves in your Titan of choice. You're done. It's so easy to get that going. And when I say so easy, I recognize that kills aren't easy for everyone. There are many who listen to this podcast to improve their abilities in the Crucible, and so I want to add on to that what I mean is it is doable for you. Like, you can get that kill and within that 7 seconds get a shoulder charge. I know you can do it. And maybe it's rare, maybe it doesn't happen all the time, but the stars do align and you can get that 50% buff going, which is a 1-shot, 2-shot on many weapons. On a high impact fusion rifle, that's 100 damage a bolt, so have fun, like, or maybe you might need to stack it with something else. I can't remember all I was doing for that, but I'm pretty sure it's just 100 damage a bolt by itself. So yeah, ridiculous buff in both PvE and PvP.
Yeah, and there's so many weapon archetypes where you can just lead to an obscenely fast either damage output or time to kill, kind of whatever side of the sandbox you're looking at here. Whether that's an SMG, whether that is fusion, the throne world, likely suspect.
Yeah,
right, definitely comes to mind as a weapon I've used Golden Tricorn on a lot. Yeah, and I mean, and we think about Golden Tricorn is highest buff in the game. Golden Tricorn times 2 is tied with multi-kill clip times 3. And when you think about the condition activators that are required for those two things,
right?
How much easier is it to get Golden Tricorn times 2 than it is to get that multi-kill times 3? It's crazy. And I think that a lot of people, we were just talking about this a little bit before the show, but write it off as, I have to get a weapon kill and then I have to get an ability kill. But you don't, though.
Yeah.
In reality, like you mentioned at the beginning, from the jump, it's better than Rampage from the jump, from one kill.
Yep.
It's better than Rampage. And that, kind of like we were talking about with, we mentioned Rampage on Randy's. Now, let's be clear. That's because it's this kinetic weapon and all it's got is Rampage.
Yeah,
okay, there's
exactly.
a reason, it's not getting Golden Tricorn on that thing. Man, what a good buff. Another Okay, similarly, but the new kid on the block, to complement Golden Tricorn, is from the Root of Nightmares raid, and that is Paracausal Affinity.
Yeah.
This is 20% increase in damage for 6 seconds on an elemental aligned kill. Okay, so now this is a thing that I think it's misconstrued a little, or maybe not misconstrued, misperceived a little bit, And basically what this means is that if you have a strand or stasis weapon, you need a strand or stasis weapon kill or ability kill to proc this. Or if it's, Arc Void or Solar, any kind of Arc Void or Solar weapon or ability kill will proc this. So it is, I think that the true strength of this trait, at least in PvE, is how ubiquitous the proc for this trait is. A weapon kill with the same weapon, right, is proccing up to 20%, or a grenade kill on any kind of, you're using a Rufus, right? You're using Strand, or you're using Stasis. All right, Stasis grenades are not super lethal, but there's some Stasis melees in the mix that can get it done. There's some Stasis abilities that can get you that 20% proc, or just proccing a kill with the weapon itself, right? You're just getting that elemental aligned kill with itself, proccing up for 20% for 6 seconds. Doesn't quite have the same skill, or not the same activation ceiling potential, maybe as Golden Tricorn, but I mean, I feel like this is a little bit more open. How you feeling in Crucible? You touched the new, raid trait in the Crucible much. This is a very new, just as of last season, right?
Yeah, I haven't messed around with it at all. And honestly, for the reason you said, it's that I didn't understand that I thought in my mind, I was like, this is you have to get a kill with another weapon or another element ability. I wasn't thinking in my head, I wasn't equating it to Golden Tricorn or Rampage, and really it is. What you've described here is this is Golden Tricorn, but anything goes, which is what I wish would. Sometimes Golden Tricorn, anything doesn't go either. I don't know if you dove into that at all, but man, that perk is annoying sometimes with its stage 2 activation. But this is really easy. You just that element, but anything, and that sounds really awesome, man. I'm gonna give it a shot now. I'm gonna give it a shot.
And I want to shout out. I mean, I'm not gonna. I don't know if I would put this in the top traits. This has been nerfed recently in the Crucible, but collective action.
Right.
And I think is a thing that is obviously there was the whole hand cannon 2-tap business that was going on for a minute. We're just gonna put that aside for now. That's fine. The thing that I want to mention about that trait specifically is the activator is not dependent on aligning your class like Golden Tricorn is. So any arc trace, any void, whatever, any solar sprite, they're all gonna trigger that trait, which. I mean, I understand it's been toned in a little bit in PvP because of the whole cast your Stasis Grenade, get a 20% damage buff, 2-tap for free kind of business was a little bit ridiculous, but still the ubiquity of the proc is very valuable, right?
Yeah, no, that is a good point, and I agree. And along with that, I do want to mention two here that go hand in hand, or work in harmony, if you will, is Harmony and Discord. Because Discord's the new one that does all this stuff that I don't think people realize what it's doing. And also Harmony, I bring it up because it's the same 7 seconds as Golden Tricorn, but it's a 20% buff like Paracausal Affinity. But now I'm really interested in Paracausal Affinity because that's what I compare it to in damage wise immediately. Is Harmony's that 20% too, and I'm oh, it's Harmony, but I don't have to use something else, and it's 1 second less, but still that's really good. So I'm really interested in that, but I do still put Harmony on the list because pairing it with things like Discord or even an exotic armor that Peacekeepers, where you're running around with double SMG, both got Harmony. It's just so much fun and can be really effective in the right hands. But with something like Discord, where you've got 7 seconds, the exact amount of time as Harmony, plus 30 airborne effectiveness, replenishes or reloads your mag depending on if you have primary or a special weapon, 25% smaller accuracy cone size, and a 0.75 times ADS multiplier. I've talked about it way too much on this show probably because it's it's 3 perks in one. You got snapshot, you got the beginning stage of Under Pressure, you got the plus 30 airborne effectiveness, and you got automatic reloads. I want to deep dive further into this for PvE specifically, because the replenishing your ammo for primaries sounds really fun if you get it rolling with another perk. Like the SMG for the dungeon can roll Discord and Incandescent then in the 4th slot, and so you get that rolling where you've got explosions with it. I don't know, just sounds really fun to me, just automatically reloading your weapon constantly, blowing up stuff. Or you could just get a different weapon that has Discord and Harmony on it together, which we brought up Randy's earlier. And that is one of the roles on there. It's on quite a few weapons now, so I am really excited to just keep messing around with both Discord and Harmony. I think they're both S tier perks. At this point, especially after you explain Paracausal Affinity to me, I'm more inclined to take Harmony off the list, despite it having its own usefulness. But Discord is like way up there for me right now, and I think there's a lot of people undervaluing it the way that Golden Tricorn was undervalued.
I'm gonna have to agree from the PvE side. We talked about a lot of these dungeon weapons with Discord, and I think that the gripe with the trait like Subsistence on a primary in PvE is that it's giving you a % back, and that's fine, right? It's gonna keep you going in the fight, in the moment.
Right.
It will keep you moving, but with Discord being the kind of like, oh my gosh, what is the name? The SMG trait that I'm trying to, I can't remember the name of this specific trait, but it's the Huckleberry SMG, right?
Oh, yeah,
and it is
not Prospector. I know you're talking about Text Mechanic.
Yeah. And it refills your whole mag on kill, right? And that was an exotic tier trait,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And now you take that and SMGs are in a pretty good spot. You got no survivors, right? You got Discord, you got Incandescent. The one that I've been using that I got to drop pretty early on from the dungeon was a Discord and Adrenaline Junkie, right? And basically my play has been, I'm usually using, I got some kind of special in my kinetic slot, whether that is a Riptide, a Heritage, Conditional Finality, Arbalest, whatever have you. We've got the special in the first slot that you land an easy kill with, a couple shots off a major or something like that. You swap over to your no survivors. You've got all these buffs up like you're just talking about. You've got Adrenaline Junkie. Ideally, I would love the Incandescent. We got to keep farming, though. We keep farming. And it allows you to just shred.
Yeah.
And it is really valuable the way that it fully refills that mag. And yeah, it's got me. I'm on some weapon swap builds now, so I think that says enough about the thing's valuable. All right.
Nice. I'm glad you're with me on that one. I am just over the moon with Discord right now. I feel like I could talk about it forever. I need to hear another one of your perks because I don't want to stay on it any longer. I love it too much.
Yeah, we each put in a perk in this list, so I feel like this is a good time to hit just like a little bonus round right now. Bonus round here is gonna be Seraph rounds. Seraph rounds isn't even actually a main trait, it's just a barrel option, right? For those of you who are not in the know here, Seraph rounds is basically ricochet, armor piercing, and high cal rounds at the same time. And it gives some stat bumps, but it gives plus a few points of range, a few points of stability. And I can't remember exactly what it was, but these used to be even more effect to the range of a weapon, right?
Yeah. It was, that's what it was. It extended the damage fall off distance. Either that or the aim assist fall. It was one or the other. It was ridiculously strong.
Yeah, I don't know where this trait came from or how it got approved at all, but I feel like, Ikelos SMG obviously had like a large time in the sun. Confessions, like I'm a Peacekeeper Titan sometimes when I play the Crucible. Like I'm just gonna come right out and say it. I'm not trying to, I'm not ashamed of it. I know what I am. All right, I play Peacekeeper Titan. Yeah, but I feel like, they talked about the way that this weapon had some kind of dynamic sway reduction built in, but at the same time, I can't help but think that Seraph rounds and this trait right here isn't also part of like what helped prop that weapon up into its just absolute shining point showcase in the meta that it was in for so long. I mean, man, Seraph rounds, what can't you do?
So good. I know, and I was thinking about that. Even we went over the Achilles weapons a few seasons ago, right after Kit had taken off, and I remember just going through and being like, why would you run anything else? Seraph rounds is so good. Whatever it's found on, I'm gonna run it on, because it reminds me of Discord as a perk, where it's like 3 perks in one, except it's what makes a perk great. It doesn't require any sort of activation. It just gives it to you. So yeah, Seraph rounds, definitely all the way. PvE, PvP, doesn't matter. I want all of these things. I want over penetration from armor piercing rounds. I want guaranteed ricochet and flinch increase from high caliber rounds. It's all of those things in one. So all great for PvP.
I think I try to be pretty in tune with like the PvP sandbox. I don't know what the vibe is specifically, but I've been hanging on to a 7 Seraph Carbine for a long time with dynamic sway and Seraph rounds, because I feel like there's something there from a range perspective. I mean, I don't know. It's been, to be fair, it's been a little while since I've touched a 450, probably specifically in the PvP sandbox. But another weapon, maybe not quite the Icolos SMG, but some Seraph rounds potential going on there.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just looking through the weapons that it rolled on, and I was looking at that one. And I was like, do I need to revisit this? I think I might, because I have some good rolled ones in my vault. And I'm like, do I have Seraph rounds on that? So yeah, I'm definitely going to revisit. Okay, I'm going to hit my bonus one for the night, and that is Arrowhead Break. Because why? There are reasons in PvP not to choose Arrowhead Break, but a lot of times it is the one to pick with that 10 handling and 30 recoil direction, because controlling your weapon is everything, and a 40 plus stat boost on just that first column is undeniably great. And it feels like the no-brainer option for me every time I pick a PvE role. And for PvP, it is frequently the option that I want to pick. So I'm curious for you if there's any other insight into it being, but I feel like it's the go-to in PvE nearly every time.
Yeah, I'm usually playing on a controller. I play on PC. I do some mouse and keyboard. I'm still trying to build up my M&K skills, but like, man, it's the building up the M&K skills is a marathon, not a sprint,
I feel ya.
And that said, recoil direction is a stat that like I can't afford to ignore usually when it comes to any kind of rapid fire weapon. It is also a trait that I think it deserves its spot on this list, because it's something that can like just change the feel of a weapon, and it's just a barrel, right? It can take a 72, 73 recoil direction weapon and make it feel perfect, and the amount of impact that can have on just as a barrel is insane, right? And there's some times where it doesn't really matter, but there's sometimes where that really matters, and the recoil direction being just right. And this goes into, kind of on the Crucible side, I'm thinking of when I'm trying to land follow-up shots with the precision weapon. I'm trying to land follow-up shots with a hand cannon or a scout rifle or something like that. And I need that recoil direction to be just right. And some weapons can make it fine, but some weapons, that Arrowhead Break can be the game changer. It can push it from the feeling pretty good to feeling great kind of a category on that consistency for landing those rapid hits.
Nice.
Yeah. Speaking of landing rapid hits, I got to talk rapid hit. Okay.
Ooh,
I feel like, just a little segue there. But, rapid hit is like a pretty old trait, I feel like at this point. And it's something that I think I value in PvE, because it's pretty easy to proc up. Now it's giving, for some like context here, it gives reload speed, reload duration multiplier, and stability. And it's not a ton each stack, but it's giving up to 5 stacks depending on how many hits you can get in a row there, up to like 50 or 60 reload and like a 0.9 multiplier and like 20 stability at the max stacks, which is something that feels really good when you're trying to land rapid hits and then reload. I think Tarnished Metal Scout Rifle, rapid hit, Volt Shot was like go-to trait combo in PvE for me. But there's also on the PvP side, there's some hand cannons that I feel like can't live without. Or that I really, really enjoy this. Like I want to say it was a Cantata that I use with a lot of rapid hit on that. You know, another thing I think is interesting about this is that it's kind of like the other side of Eye of the Storm.
Right.
You know, because and I mean, so I'm interested to hear your take on like, how do you feel like rapid hit versus Eye of the Storm in the Crucible, and do you think that rapid hit is like asking too much of you versus how much Eye of the Storm offers? Right.
I don't. The main thing to me is I always find myself asking the question, does the stability help that much? And you mentioned asking too much. For something like a hand cannon, it's kind of made for hitting that way. But also, like, think about it in terms of a 3-tap. Because that's kind of like the optimal. You hit 3 taps, you're bumping up 2 stability, 12 stability, 14 stability. Like, it helps out there, but the reload speed afterwards isn't going to matter as much. So in terms of something versus Eye of the Storm that's giving you like accuracy, I tend to compare it more towards something like Perpetual Motion that's giving you 10 to 20 stability for just moving. And I'm like, that seems way more beneficial, because I would have to hit, 5 shots, precision shots, in a row to get that, and it goes away in 2 seconds. Whereas Perpetual Motion, all I have to do is keep running, and I still got it. So in that regard, and Perpetual Motion is doing a lot more. It's giving me handling and reload speed at the same time too, up to 20 for each. So it's not as big of a jump, but it's just much more accessible than rapid hit. Since rapid hit got nerfed a little while ago, I have been much less on board. Just the multiplier is so small right now, and it requires so many hits that I'm not as on board with it. Like, I definitely see the point. Like, there's some weapons that it's just, what else are you gonna do to increase your stability? Like rapid hit on spare rations is a real popular one right now, and so that's, I get it. Nothing else is going to improve your stability unless you're slide shotting, which some people, that's not your play style, but you're always going to be going for precision hits, so rapid hit will always help. So it just depends on the archetype and the weapon. It's not as much for me. And then on the flip side, with reload speed, I'm just much more into, like, just, I compared it earlier to, or not this, but I was comparing Feeding Frenzy to Impulse Amplifier. And so there's just other reload things that are much more interesting to me, usually in that column. So it sits in that line of like, yeah, it's easy to use, and it just kind of happens automatically, but it's not that much of a buff unless you're just doing straight boss DPS, which, when are you doing that with something with rapid hit? So that's where I sit with it, I think. Unfortunately.
No, that's all right. That's all right. And it is kind of like I've mentioned Volt Shot on like the Tarnished Metal, right? And it's like, well, that's good, because Volt Shot is like specifically capitalizing on the thing that rapid hit does well, which is not, it's not always the case. But I know I heard you mention another trait in there, kind of that worked its way into our top mention list, that goes along with a phrase that I heard a long time ago. I don't know if I first heard this from Cammy or from Cool Guy, but they said ABS, which stands for always be sliding. Okay.
Oh yeah.
And what might fit that playstyle, huh?
Well, Slide Shot, is one of those perks that I didn't see it for a while, and I think that's why it flew off the radar for me. And because for PvP specifically, you had the sliding nerf giving you that, it was like a minus 20 stability reduction for just sliding. So for a long time I was like, well, I'm out on that, because I don't want this, negative impact and then a positive impact. It's like putting liquid coils and charge time masterwork on at the same time. Like, I'm just not a fan of.
Just kind of nullifies, right?
Yeah, nullifying my perks, and so I just wasn't interested. But now that sliding nerf is gone, you got plus 30 stability, plus 20 range, and a 15% mag refresh for 3 seconds. Why not take it. And the amount of perks that are out there that don't give you range, it's so rare that you get a range boost along with that other stuff, and then a mag refresh on top of that. I used to have the old spare rations, I believe it was the old one, came with slide shot in one column and subsistence in the other, and I was a big fan. That was like my old version of subsistence in Discord. Just keep it rolling just all the time was a very fun loop. But slide shot's just so good, and I think it becomes good in PvE too because of the mag refresh. If that wasn't there, I don't think it would have ended up on this list, but because it has both, and it's a total of 50 stats plus a 15% mag refresh, that's pretty hard to ignore.
Yeah, I would agree. And this is not Slideways, and I want to make a key distinction right there. Slide Shot is the one that made it into the top traits discussion. Slideways, unfortunately, is nowhere to be found at this moment, and it is in no small part to the fact that Slide Shot has no activation cooldown timer, but Slideways does. And Slide Shot was a weapon that appeared on a certain grenade launcher by the name of Ignition Code that is still chased to this day by many. And now I've got my Pardon Our Dust, and that was like my blinding grenade launcher for a while. But I've got to say that there's no way, beyond some kind of crazy incentive, that I'm ever going to be deleting that Ignition Code with the spike grenade slide shot combo. It's just incredibly powerful in PvE, and I don't know. Thank you. Like, seriously, thank you to whoever shipped that, because, oh my gosh, is it a ridiculously fun combo to use. But, yeah, so I think that right there just solidified it as a great perk in PvE, although it was a pretty good one anyways before that, and that just absolutely sent it over the edge for those that have got an Ignition Code out there.
You're going to kill me. I'm pretty sure I deleted one of those the other day. Like, just like... I just got it from, because I've been chasing a main ingredient with Rangefinder forever, because I just it will not give it to me, and I'm pretty sure it's in the splicer weapons are with main ingredient now in Dares of Eternity, and I'm pretty sure one of those dropped for me with that perk, and I was just like, when do I ever use grenade launcher? I know this is probably good, but I'm just gonna delete.
That's all right. Hey, that's all right. We keep moving. Hey, no judgment. Okay,
hey,
we keep moving.
I need the vault space, man. I need that vault space. That's why we're here, folks.
Okay, I got an honest question. What's the vault sitting at right now, Lego?
Oh, I can't believe you're asking me this. It's bad. 594 out of 600.
All right, I'm at 589, so I'm not really
you're not far behind. Okay.
Here. Yeah.
No shame here. No shame here. Oh, yeah, I'm pretty much permanently. I'll bring it down to like 550 at the start of a season, but I chase stuff so hard, and I keep so many rolls of it, specifically for stuff that I have to cover, and until I finish it. For example, trinary system. I have so many trinary systems because I haven't just got the one, and until you get it, you're just kind of fumbling around with all these mediocre rolls, and until you put like a full review out of something, you're like, I gotta keep all this mediocre stuff. So yeah, it's not great.
A trinary system's that Gambit one, right?
Yeah. Every season, I grind Gambit because I've got the double accuracy rolls. Those are cool. Under pressure, tap the trigger in both columns, just like main ingredient. It's pretty good. But adaptive struggle with their bolts to kill at different resiliences unless you have high impact reserve. So I feel like I just need a good under pressure high impact reserves roll to really know for certain that it is not as good as my Burden of Guilt, because I love my Burden of Guilt or my now Tachyon Force, which is just ruling everything.
Yeah, why? Be proud. I was playing some Gambit the other day with Gibbon, one of our patrons, and I did manage to land the under pressure high impact reserves roll, and I did not delete it. Okay, wow. I kept hanging on to this thing, but I will say I've given it a few games, and I'm not sure it's going to beat the Tachyon Force. So I think that you're okay with, if you're hanging on to the Tachyon Force, not the dog on this thing at all. It's actually surprisingly good stat-wise for a playlist weapon, but Tachyon Force is that guy.
Don't delete it until the zoom changes, because you never know. Like, we don't know how that's going to affect Fusion specifically with their oddball handling of magnification versus zoom. Like, what's actually going to happen there? I can't wait to find out. I'm nervous and excited all at the same time.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because when everybody's talking about zoom, they're all talking SMGs.
Oh,
right.
No,
and that's true. That will shake up the SMG meta a little bit, but yeah, it will shake up the Fusion meta.
Fusions are they're gonna get flipped upside down. I almost guarantee something weird is gonna happen, because they just operate outside the field of every other. They're the only archetype that does that, where magnification and zoom are like decoupled, and it just operates in a different way. But yeah, I'm really interested. While we're on that, real quick, I want to stick on the subject of auto reloading for a second, because we brought up subsistence earlier and how it's just like a portion, but here on Slideshot it's good because you don't need to kill. But then you've got overflow, and you've got a perk as well in there. But I'm wondering, like, what is the standout perk for reloads? Is it overflow? Is it auto loading? Is it ambitious assassin? Where do you land with all this stuff?
So I see ambitious assassin as like the high skill ceiling one, or like the high potential one, I guess I should say, is a good way to put that. Overflow is like, it's very interesting to hear you say that, because that is a trait that I see is a lot of PvE potential, but little PvP, because
really?
Well, I mean, I'm just thinking ammo economy, and like usually I don't like. I'm a big sniper guy. I mean, I kind of see a dabble in all the different special archetypes, but like I'm a big sniper guy, and I just am not. I'm like, I don't, there's no appeal to me on like in a sniper with overflow, right?
Okay.
Versus the reason that I put auto-loading holster on my list is because of, in PvE it's just damage output, right? That's like a simple one. It's just DPS terms, is like the easiest way to make that sell. In PvP, for me, it was about just availability and uptime. And I think that the reason that I caught onto this was because I had a shotgun, I believe, that had auto-loading holster, and I came to really value the fact that I could just swap to the weapon, and I know that if I have shots, they're loaded. And I don't have to think about it, and that's kind of a clutch thing, or crutch thing, I should say, not clutch. I mean, it can be a clutch thing, But it was just this, like, I know I'm gonna have the shot there if I swap to the weapon. If I swap to my shotgun and I'm close range, like, I know I've got the bullets loaded. And in PvE, it's just the constant uptime of I'm shooting off my GL shot, I'm swapping over to my primary or whatever it is, trace rifle that I'm using. I'm laying down shots, I'm swapping back to the GL, and I'm putting down more bullets down range. But it is, like, I feel like Crucible terms is hard to argue against Slide Shot in that terms, because that is such a little, like, it's such a low ask in that term,
Yeah. Okay, I want to address the overflow thing real quick, because in PvP, so auto-loading feels like a wasted slot a lot of times, because it's something I can already do. Overflow does something more. It overflows the magazine for PvP, and so a lot of times you're in a fight that lasts longer than it needs to, and you've got those extra bullets that no one is expecting you to have, and it just feels ridiculous to go in with twice the mag on a primary. And then on the special weapon side, I, for the most part, agree with you. I'm like, I would rather have auto loading on a shotgun, but I found that for most weapons, I would rather have something that enhances the way that weapon feels rather than change the way it reloads, unless I'm doing some crazy, like, double special something and I just don't have the time to juggle it all, in which case I'm usually running auto loading on my boots rather than on the perk. But what I love is overflow on slow reloading ones like a glaive, where it can take just forever, and to just while you're shielding, run over ammo in the Crucible and just have it auto reload those shots in the mag to where I never have to let go of that damage resistance and keep shooting. Oh, that feels so good in PvP and in PvE. And I know that's very specific for Glaive and PvP, but because I love it so much on primary weapons too, and I've heard those around me love it too, they're like, oh, I got 16 hand cannon shots, let's go, you know, and they're like jumping in. Like there's just something about that feels awesome and gives you that extra boost in an engagement. So that's why I kind of landed on it for if I were to choose that would just be the best of both worlds, it would be Overflow.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think that I got so... there's like a few weapons specifically I think that make me biased towards auto-loading holster, right? I've got a Riptide with auto-loading shield clip that I don't know how many hours I've used in PvE, or Explosive Personality had auto-loading in Frenzy. And that was a trait combo that I enjoyed so much because Frenzy is a trait that you can proc in the background. Right. So you're engaged in combat, whatever you're using, you swap to the weapon. Frenzy's already activated. It's already giving you that handling buff, and it's always loaded. And you just let your shots off, and you keep going back. So I think there's a few weapons that kind of made me a little biased towards that. But now that I've gotten, we've been talking about main ingredient or loaded question, right? It just came back. Now loaded question, it's got the classic auto-loading holster reservoir burst, but I mean, why would I not, to your exact point, why would I not just go Overflow and get even more reservoir burst shots out at the same time?
Exactly. Oh, man, yeah, it's good.
It's a tough argument there.
I'll let you hit one and one of your perks, and then I'm probably going to cut out a bunch of mine here. I'm probably just going to hit like my last 2 or 3 here. My list was pretty extensive. I should have narrowed it down more, but I have some that are like I think will be interesting because they're questionable on like their usefulness in PvE, and that's where the conversation is most interesting here. Whereas something like Swashbuckler, I feel like I'm like, oh, that's a given, that's great everywhere. But I'll hit a few of my more questionable ones. I'll let you go first though.
One of the ones I'm just going to jump in here, and I'm going to say that this is a big statement. This is probably my favorite trait.
Whoa!
Period. Just at end of the conversation right there, and that is because that's because of a lot of reasons. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you that trait is explosive payload. Explosive payload is it's an old one. This trait has been around for a long time. It appears on many different weapons, and what it does is consistent, and the reason I'm going to say this is one of my favorites is because it has a 0 activation requirement and has a 100% uptime. And PvE, so to clarify, explosive payload splits your damage 50-50 explosive and regular damage. The explosive damage is increased by 30%, which basically results in, if you're hitting body shots, that is 15% increase in damage, and if you're hitting crits, it varies a little bit, let's say around 11% increase in damage. And there are some reasons that this is very desirable in the Crucible too. But I mean, I the idea that I have a damage perk that is dealing 10 to 15% increased damage 100% of the time, and is increasing like flinch, right? And it's just obscene, the amount of like benefit that gives you. But it so this is also affecting some stuff in the Crucible. I mean, I'll throw it to you here on first I'll ask, are you messing with explosive payload in the Crucible? Is this like a go-to trait for you, or is this something that's like kind of on the fringes? And we'll just start there.
It's definitely a go-to trait. I, for whatever reason, don't gravitate toward it personally, but it is definitely a go-to trait in the Crucible because of the lack of damage fall off on the explosive portion of the of the explosive payload. Because any other scenario, a hand cannon shot, you're dealing so much less damage, and for half of that damage to have no damage fall off is crazy useful in a fight where you're just leaving someone with just a bit of health, and that other 50%'s like, nah, they're going down. So crazy useful. The only reason I don't is I operate in that mid-range. I live in the mid-range in the Crucible. I don't if I'm fighting a pulse rifle or a scout or something like that they've just got that playstyle down, or they got the barricade or whatever it is that they're playing against, their overshields that keep regenerating, I'm not even gonna mess with that. I'm gonna find a way to flank or close the gap where I don't have to play that long range game. Or if there's a sniper that's just really good, I'm not challenging that. I'm finding a way to close the gap. So because of that, explosive payload isn't as useful for me as when I get close, I just want to nail my shots. I want opening shot or something that is decreasing my accuracy cone size, something like that. So, but undeniably, unlimited damage fall off and 50% of your shot is ridiculously good, and I didn't realize how much it does extra in PvE. 30% more that's a lot. That's a lot.
And I've been holding on to this for a long time. It's still one of my most used weapons in the PvE sandbox, but if you've been following along with the TWABs and the updates, stuff coming down the line, mid-season is gonna have a pretty big buff for hand cannons in PvE, and there is a certain hand cannon by the name of Fatebringer that can roll explosive payload in the 3rd column, and you can put Frenzy in its 4th column. You could, and there's a bunch of other traits you can put in there too. Don't get me wrong; it's stacked up. It's one of the best. But when you're stacking up Frenzy and explosive payload, and you're talking about a 26 to 30% damage increase on every shot going out constantly, and as long as you stay in combat, there's a reason Fatebringer stays on top, and it's been in the conversation even though hand cannons have been in a bad spot, and now they're about to be in a good one, and I'm feeling the Fatebringer era is coming back in Destiny 2 with these hand cannon buffs coming up in just a couple weeks here.
I am so glad you said that, because I got a Fatebringer time loss sitting right here in the vault. Arrowhead break, flared magwell, explosive payload, Frenzy. I'm pumped to check that out. Okay, I'm glad you said that. That wasn't even on my radar at all, but I was thinking about that buff, and my mind was running towards the aggressive frame, but now I'm like, ooh, that is a great damage buff combo. I didn't even think of it as a damage buff combo. That's priceless info. Amazing. Okay, I want to hit you with something that is... I just have no idea what you're going to... I have zero idea. Right. We didn't talk about it pre-show or anything, but I did pose the question, how do you feel about accuracy perks in PvE? Okay. Because they're the highlight of PvP. And in PvE, I know for most they're not a big deal, but if the increase is big enough, is it worth it? Like dynamic sway reduction, which is one of the only perks that gives up to a 50% minus 50% accuracy cone size and a minus 100% accuracy cone growth once you've hit 10 shots, which is just like, how do you miss at that point?
So we're just talking like dynamics. What we're just talking accuracy perks in PvP, right? Or in PvE.
It is a general question, but I am narrowing it down because I know that they're not as good. I'm like, at what point is it like, oh, I think this might, like, I would be like, oh yeah, that auto rifle, it's got dynamic sway reduction, it's got a great damage kill perk. Is that worth it? Or are you like, no, even then, I would rather take a, reload perk or handling perk or something different like that. Where do you land with that?
I would say... So I'm gonna just come out and say my first thought here is the argument for dynamic sway reduction in PvE has got to be pretty much solely based off of crits means more damage, and that's the argument. And I think that everybody, like, a lot of the thought is like, oh, I'm just gonna hit my crits in PvE. Well, yeah, really. But like maybe you're not though. I'm not trying to dog on anybody out here, but like you're just not gonna always hit all your crits. It's just not gonna happen. Yeah. And there are some archetypes where I definitely would not have thought that something like dynamic sway on a weapon that I'm using in PvE is going to be appealing at all. But I remember specifically on a weapon like Blood Feud, which was a submachine gun. It was aggressive archetype submachine gun from a couple seasons ago, and it had a base of like it had a base of like 10 stability, right? And I remember using this weapon and actually thinking like, oh, I'm actually hitting all my crits when I'm using dynamic sway reduction. And I'm sure that there is like less of a market or kind of desire for that. If you're an M&K player and you're always just, you're having to deal with like maybe a little bit less of like visual recoil or shake or like whatever it may be between controller and M&K, maybe that's not as big of an issue. But again, like when it comes to PvE, like crits means damage, and like crit multipliers are a huge thing in PvE, no matter what weapon you're using, and like you can't totally ignore it, even though I think it is something that can be overlooked sometimes, or also can be compensated for with other very valuable traits. I mean, we talked a minute ago about Arrowhead Break. Okay. Arrowhead Break can be kind of the middle ground of being like enough to help you hit those crits in PvE without having to worry too much about your accuracy perks.
Right. Okay. That's good explanation, because I'm often tempted to keep a dynamic sway reduction roll just for PvP, which is justified. Like, yeah, it's a great, amazing perk for PvP. But when you're just keeping one and you got some middle ground, and you've got Arrowhead Break already on it, you bring up a good point. You're like, I could actually live with this other roll because the benefits are better for both. So, yeah, okay. Glad to have the justification. But I also want to throw it back to you in saying that was for accuracy cone. What about handling? Not reload speed, but handling. And I bring that up because I've fallen in love with shot swap and steady hands, because not so much shot swap because it's just the ready so speed, but the 100 handling and a 0.825 times handling duration multiplier for 8.5 seconds after a kill. That's the one I'm just like. And there's so many new weapon swap perks with Discord and Harmony and Cascade Point. And once you stack on steady hands to that, you're flying, you're zooming. It feels great. And I'm curious how that translates over to PvE.
I'm going to say, so we were talking about crits a second ago with accuracy. Handling, handling in PvP is like, you get the shotgun shot off or not, and you live or don't, or you clean up from the body on the sniper rifle shot, or you don't and you die. So it's not quite the same with PvE, but on PvE we have the kind of this weird like handling DPS relationship. And you cannot deny the relationship between your swaps and your handling speed for your weapons, especially when you kind of get into some more like niche or DPS strategies and something like that. Handling cannot be ignored, right? And there was a long time where people that are very into PvE will be very familiar with the double slug meta of the Deep Zone Crypt era, Vaulted Glass-ish era, right? That was entirely built upon the fact that your handling was circumventing RPM on your weapons, right? So that was a handling-dependent DPS meta, which is
so interesting.
Very weird to think about. But and then again, you bring into a situation like you have weapons like Apex Predator and Cold Comfort that have very much so bubbled up in the PvE meta as DPS options. You want to be using bait and switch. You want to be getting those. You want to be not only trying to make the most out of that trait by getting the most rockets off at a time as you can, which brings things like Rally Barricade, Lunafaction Boots kind of back onto the table. But then also you have the situation in which you need to be swapping between those weapons as fast as you can to get that perk active, to capitalize, to get the most out of the DPS phase as you can. So those out there that are truly looking to optimize their DPS phase with a bait and switch type of combo, anything like that, know that handling is a factor. No doubt about that.
Okay. So with that said, would shot swap be of interest to you on this list at all? Since, like steady hands, that is for a time you get it, but it needs a kill. Shot swap, you can get those kills already, stack up the shot swaps, and then when DPS phase comes, you're just flying through your weapons, or at least to that one. I could see some speed run type strategy where you need to do that, maybe it's not as applicable, but it's the number one thing I go to when I think like something super speedy.
I think that shot swap. It's very funny that you say this, because the first time I saw shot swap, I like kind of wrote it off. I was like, no, I'm not very interested in that. And it came back a little bit, right? But the problem with something like shot swap is, again, in this scenario where I'm looking to capitalize on bait and switch, I probably have, like on Apex Predator, I have reconstruction. So I could activate bait and switch with that first rocket and then get a second rocket off that's going to hit for that immediate damage buff before I even swap over. Or if I'm willing to build into it with Cold Comfort, Envious Assassin, I could kind of build up Envious Assassin and then swap right over to my weapon and have that buff up if I'm willing to kind of invest in that. I will say an area that this has come up a little bit recently is that you have a trait called harmonic resonance, which is very near and dear to my heart. This is I should have mentioned this earlier. I get to work a little bit on Lightfall as a gameplay specialist, right? This is like a very formative time for me, getting to know the game and stuff like that, and have a little bit of an impact on this trait and the way that it affects the sandbox. But the value that you get from the handling, from the bonus of using harmonic resonance on a few different weapons, is also something that kind of come up in the Ghost of the Deep dungeon. Because of the way that if you can very easily run multiple weapons of this type, it's affecting the loose end hive, and it's giving you plus 20 handling or plus 30 handling or something like that. I think if you have that artifact mod. So the way that you can invest in that kind of by proxy through this origin trait that's also simultaneously giving you damage against the boss is to draw my attention. It's felt good that has been like a desirable origin trait this season. Yeah.
That's awesome. I see the value in these things now. I say we're starting to get in that territory that we're known for on this show of getting a little long. So I say we hit just like one more each, unless there's like two that you're like, no, I gotta hit these. Let's hit like one more each and kind of, because there's some of them that we've kind of talked about, like we talked about like Frenzy and Threat Detector, like in passing. So let me know if you want to hit two. I'm all for it, but let's plan on one more each and see what we got here.
So I'm going to hit one real quick, because I think this is something that is slept on a little bit in the PvP sandbox that I've seen some people take really big advantage of when it comes down to it, and that's 1-2 punch. This is a trait that is seen. It's a 100% melee damage increase when you land your majority of your shotgun pellets there, right? This is a trait that I think is seen as a PvE trait, but when it came to some Trials meta a season or two ago, people started to see the value in the bubble bursting, right? You see people rolling in here with a shotgun, and they want to come up. You want a chance against this Titan. They plant a bubble. You need to plant a well or another bubble right next to it. You run in there with the 1-2 punch, and it's like you have actually a chance to like take this Titan out if you play this correctly. But I think that it's the stuff, but I think I may leave with Unrelenting.
Okay.
Just because, again, I wanted to get this one in there, is I think it is something that is it is so valuable, right? Unrelenting, basically whenever you proc it, you get 80 HP, which is like a pretty good chunk, and you can trigger it decently easily, not crazy, often in the Crucible. I believe it's every other kill in the Crucible will trigger Unrelenting, right? Which I feel is kind of what keeps it just like strictly out of like the high meta, or like being very meta, because 80 HP is such a big chunk of health, and this is like Wormhusk and like One-Eyed Mask and things like this are like such a driver of the meta for so long, that Unrelenting offers kind of like this just background, maybe not quite as strong, maybe not quite as easy to activate, but still high potential for those who are willing to put the investment in a little bit and take advantage of this trade, I think.
Yeah, it's so tough because it's what you said. It's every other kill, but also it's frequently in a column that has something necessary for that weapon to feel good in PvP. Like I'm thinking like, rangefinder on Palindrome, or you've got on Ice Luna, it's in the column that perpetual motion rangefinder and rapid hitter in, and it's so tough to give up that perk for these things. But like you said, it's just like right there out of reach of meta. Like it could be the thing. But because it's every other kill, but there are PvP players that's what they live for, is those duels, and so it is that back and forth. It's one step away from being super meta. I'm 100% with you, and I feel like I need to go back to your list again on something that I didn't see in there that is at the end of my list, and that is Grenadier and Pugilist. And the reason being is, one, they're both huge amounts of ability energy back for using these weapons. On special weapons specifically, on primary weapons it's kind of like, it's nice to have, but on special weapons it's like, oh my gosh, like if I run out, if I got a Hammer Titan build and I lose my hammer over the cliff, I can get it right back with just 5 shots from this shotgun or whatever, just those scenarios. But also in, if you're not using an unlimited melee build and you just want to use it a lot, these are going to help you do that. And Grenadier is also reloading your ammo every time you throw a nade. So you've got the dual purpose use of it. And in PvP, I feel like they're very slept on, honestly. Like I feel like they should be higher than they are, especially if you're running something that like Swash, like No Reprieve. I loved that shotgun because you could craft it with Pugilist and Swashbuckler. So just that nasty combo of starting a Trials round with a punch and then one-shotting the other 2 players and then starting the round back and I've got my melee back like immediately. That is crazy to me. So I'm curious how these stack up for you in PvE.
Yeah, I mean, I can't deny the ability energy, right, from either of these traits. There's definitely been a little bit recently where I've been using Smite Marine Pulse with Demo AJ. You can't deny that. And another, we were talking about hand cannons getting like the buff back up. They're kind of coming into the meta here. And another one that has like really been on my mind is the Judgment hand cannon. And this is old. This is from Prophecy. This is an old weapon that can roll Demo AJ, and the ability to just capitalize on that synergy there. I play a lot of Archetype and a big Thunder Crash guy, right? Pulse grenades, whatever you name it. So those have been absolute staples there, and I think the place where I've taken the most capitalization on the reload of it was another value, the Disciple weapon, Deliverance, right? Deliverance is a great weapon. It's a precision stasis fusion that could roll Chill Clip, and it could roll Demo in the 3rd column, which was not only refueling your grenade, like you said, right? You're getting crazy amounts of energy back, but then also you use your first 3 or 4 Chill Clip shots, you throw a grenade, you're right back to the top of the mag for more Chill Clip.
That's good.
And there was just such a good. It just Riptide, was like Big Brother, and it kind of like pushed Deliverance out of the spotlight. It's a good weapon. There's no denying the fact that Deliverance, Demo Chill Clip is still a great weapon. And that's even I've been using Demo Paracausal Affinity on This is the reason my vault is at 580 something still right now, but I have a couple different Rufus Furies, right? And that is one of them is Demo Paracausal Affinity, because I know no matter what grenade I'm using, it's helping me get that flow back, right? I get a strand grapple melee kill, I'm getting more, grapple energy back, whatever the case may be. Yeah.
God, those are some really cool combos. I'm like, man, Grenadier and Pugilist, amazing perks. Okay, cool. Well, is there anything else you want to hit? Before we end the show, if you got to get something out, I understand.
No, I mean, yeah, we just talked about Frenzy. Frenzy is also just a top for mine.
Yeah.
It's just so good. Anything that gives a plus 100 to any stat is obscene. I can't believe that's a thing. Target lock in PvE also absolutely a thing.
Yeah. For
You know,
PvP
even after
too,
it's got
yeah.
hit, it's still a thing. I don't know. Yeah, this has been great. It's definitely interesting to have that thought of like what is truly just delivering that most value. And I think maybe after this episode, I'll finally be able to get my vault below 550. Maybe, we'll see. Yeah,
I'm definitely gonna see. You've created the opposite problem for me. I've opened my mind to these other perks, and I'm like, oh wait. No, I should have kept that. Oh, what if I combine this and that? Because I just didn't know the way that worked, and because my mind's always so focused on PvP that I'm like, ooh, there's some really cool stuff here for PvE. So yeah, I'm into it, and I know that Saint has more to say about all this, and what's fortunate about that for all of you is that you can continue to listen to him with Court and Impetus on Podcast versus Enemies. And so you should definitely go check that show out along with Beneath Twin Suns. Those will both be continuing. I'm looking forward to telling you all about the final Destiny Massive Breakdowns podcast episode. We're trying to put some stuff together for that. So like I said, it may not be in the regularly scheduled order of events, but be sure to follow Twitter, Discord, and we will let you know. Before we go though, Saint, where can everybody find you?
Yeah, my name is Saint Kabr. You can find me by Saint_Kabr on Twitter, hanging out in Discord in the Destiny Massive Breakdowns channel and in the game.
Nice. And this has been Legoleflash, and you can find me on YouTube and here on the final episode. But until then, have a good one.